Hi guys, sorry there was no video for a couple of weeks now. I was just very busy doing all kind of things with my life, but I promise the video should keep coming back, hopefully at least once a week, and if I can, but we'll see about that, twice. But for this video, I'm doing something a bit different. So I went to Morocco recently, so earlier this year. It was quite an important kind of trip for me because I was born in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and my parents lived there for almost 10 years. So I just kind of wanted to see as an adult, how the country was like. So that's why I decided to go there for a week, more specifically in the city of Fes, which is the cultural capital of Morocco. And from there, I did go around, and the least I can say is that it was amazing. It was such a great experience, amazing for pictures, and just quite different. I definitely loved it, and wanted to share it with you in case any of you is looking to kind of go there in coming months, just so you know what to expect, and hopefully they'll be useful. So on this, I leave you to the video. After landing at the airport in Fes, I waited for the driver from the house I was staying at to get to the city proper. You still had a good 40 minutes to actually reach the old town from the airport. There, I discovered the beautiful place I would be staying at, which I called a riad, but actually riad would be if there was an interior garden. Instead, it's called a dar, which just means a house, but it is so beautiful, with a central square, an open ceiling, and a view on the old town that was amazing. After leaving my stuff at the Dar, I decided to go get my first dinner in Morocco and visit a bit the old town. It was a complete maze, so lots of small streets, not always the best lighting, but so very different from London, and with an atmosphere that was really amazing. I managed to find a place I've been indicated to where I got my first couscous, which was very decent. I went around to take some pictures and get some local pastries. All in all, this first evening in Fes was a cultural shock. I discovered a place that was so unlike what I was used to, that made me want even more to know what it looks like during the day. When I woke up the next morning, I had the pleasure to admire the magnificence of the city under the rising sun. That made me very happy about my choice when it comes to my accommodation. I also had a very nice traditional Moroccan breakfast, and I was all ready to start discovering the city proper. My first stop was to go see the famous Tanneries. Fes is quite well known for its leatherwork, and its tannery is actually the second largest in northern Africa, close second to Marrakesh. When you get around there, you can see all kind of skins hanging and drying under the sun. And as you get closer and closer, the smells start to get stronger. Eventually, I managed to find a place where you could look down on the tanneries and see people working there. It was the opportunity to take very nice pictures, but God, the smell was horrible. After my visit to the tanneries, I was not really feeling like that I could eat anything. So instead, I decided to go down the two main streets of the old Medina in Fes, which are Tara Kbira and Tara Sghira. On these streets, you have a lot of shops and things where you can buy souvenirs, but also more traditional things. And as you follow them, you go deeper and deeper in the Medina. I left myself getting lost there and left the alleys lead me to places I was not looking for. And eventually ended up in the souk, which just means a market in Arabic. but it's a very different market from what you may be used to in France or in England. There, like, you can find butchers, you can find people selling all kind of spices as well as vegetables, and the least you can say is that it's very fresh to the point that you can find the chickens alive, sometimes even like walking around. And if there is one thing I had already noticed about Morocco, it is that it is the paradise for anyone who does street photography. I literally loved it. Managed to take so many pictures that really I'm proud of. The souk in Fes is actually very big. It is an enclosed area, so you cannot see the sky when you're in there. It seems to be divided by professions. So you have the butchers, but also further down you would find the artisans neighborhood. You would find like leather, you would find people doing textile, pottery, carpets, and metalwork. That was actually very impressive to see them hammering like the bronze into pots and other little things you could buy. Also, it's home to the oldest university in the world and a lot of madrassas, so Quranic schools, that you can actually visit. I did visit 2 of them, which I found beautiful. The carvings on the walls, the architecture, everything was so ornamented, so precise, and it's crazy to think that these buildings were designed and created more than 5 centuries ago. It was a beautiful place to take pictures, but also it was swarmed with tourists, which made it a bit difficult to always get a clean pic. Eventually, I decided to grow hungry, so I went to a restaurant that used to be a ruin. It's called the Ruin Garden. It was pretty nice. On the way, I also found a very nice baker who was doing this small aniseed breads that were delicious and extremely cheap. After this nice lunch, I decided to go check the other Medina. So where I was staying so far is called Jezl Bali, which is the old Medina, the first one that was built. But a couple of centuries later, the rulers decided to create a new Medina that is called Fes El Jadid, where you can find the Jewish quarter and also most of the palaces. On the way there is an amazing garden that is so nice to walk through. So I took the time to kind of slow down a little bit and just enjoy before reaching the new Medina. To be honest, I was less a fan compared to the old Medina. The streets were a bit bigger, but there were a bit less things to see. I found a couple of mosques that were very nice. Of course, as a non-Muslim, I could not get inside, but I was allowed to take pictures of the courtyard. So I was happy to actually have seen that part of the city, but I much prefer going back to the old town that to me had just so much more charm. Okay, I just arrived in Meknes, like one of the imperial cities with Fes, Marrakesh and Rabat. And I've heard the Medina is very nice, so we're gonna check that out. And then a bit later in the day, I'm gonna try to go to Volubilis, like Roman ruins that is at the UNESCO, as well as try to go see a vineyard, because it's the heartland of the vineyards in Morocco. Meknes is one of the 4 imperial cities of Morocco. It is actually quite old. It was founded in the 11th century by the Almoravids as a military settlement. But he really became famous when he became the capital of Morocco under the reign of Sultan Moulay Ismail. This Alawite ruler was quite well known because he was nicknamed the Sun King of Morocco. He was in direct competition with Louis XIV in France and tried to do his own Versailles. He created a massive imperial palace complex and gave to the city an extensive fortification and monumental gates. The main highlight of the city was the former palace of the ruler, as well as the massive gate called Bab Mansour. Unfortunately, Bab Mansour was in renovation when I was there, so I did not manage to see it, but I did take a walk in the old city, just to have a look at how the Medina compared to the one in Fes. The streets were wider, but all in all I was a bit disappointed. The main attractions, like the ruins of the palace, were not available, and even if I saw a couple of things that were worth mentioning, overall there were way less things to see than in Fes. I nevertheless had a good time there, walking by the fortifications and trying to imagine how the city had looked like back in the days. From Meknes, I decided to take a taxi to go to the other big place of interest in the region, which is the Roman ruins of Volubilis. So I went to Meknes but not stay there long, just enough time to get lunch, go to the main attractions, the main gates, Bab Mansour, but unfortunately it was under renovation. And right now I took a taxi to go to Volubilis, so a Roman city 50 kilometers away from Meknes, and that looks pretty nice. And after that we'll go to the holy city of Moulay-Idriss. So that looks pretty nice. Named after a flower that grows in the area, Volubilis is a partly excavated Berber Roman city. It was the capital of the Kingdom of Mauritania. It grew rapidly under the Roman rule during the 1st century, and at its peak it covered more than 42 hectares, with a massive set of walls, as well as major public buildings like a basilica, a temple, a triumphal arch, big streets, mosaics. It was quite a sight back then. When the Roman Empire started to weaken, unfortunately, people started to leave because it was quite remote and hard to defend. And it continued to be inhabited for at least another 700 years, but in a much smaller way. The ruins right now remain mostly intact until they were shaken by an earthquake in the mid-18th century. It was then looted by Moroccan rulers to build Meknes. Despite all these events, the city is quite a sight. It is at the UNESCO World Heritage List and is exceptionally well preserved. It wasn't really not something I was expecting when going to Morocco. So seeing something like you would find in Rome, in the middle of the countryside, left quite an impression on me. I took time to go through the streets of the city and read all the inscriptions, as well as taking a few pictures. I would definitely recommend if you come to Meknes to have a side trip there, because it's worth going for sure. Before going back to Meknes, I decided to do a side trip to Moulay-Idriss, the city that is literally next to Volubilis. Moulay-Idriss is actually a holy city in Morocco. It was founded by its namesake, Moulay-Idriss, the first ruler of Morocco, and is considered by many as the Mecca and Medina of the poor. So for Moroccans who cannot afford to do the Hajj all the way to Saudi Arabia, they can go to Moulay-Idriss 5 times, and that should equal to going once to Mecca and Medina. Walking down the street, I saw a very unique thing in Morocco, which is a minaret from a mosque. It was the only cylindrical minaret in Morocco. The streets themselves were full of color, with lots of green, which is the color of Islam. I was quite happy to have done this side trip before going back to Meknes, as it was really worth taking an hour or two to visit. After this long day, I decided to go back to Fes, where I had a quick dinner before going to bed, as the next day was gonna be very exhausting too, as I was going to the Rif for the day, so much further north, and I was going to visit the very famous blue pearl of the Rif, Chefchaouen. On my third day, I had to wake up quite early to join the tour I had booked to go all the way north to Chefchaouen. There were several hundred kilometers between Fes and the destination, so I had hesitated a long time before booking this tour. Nevertheless, I was very quickly comforted in my decision. We first stopped at a reservoir that was beautiful. You could see it from very far away, a big lake, just at the feet of massive mountains. This is the kind of things I came to Morocco to actually discover. We had the time to buy a few fruit juices and take pictures before jumping back in the car to drive all the way to Chefchaouen.
There's nothing like Midwest Christmas. It's a fairy tale, hard to believe.
As we're going through kilometers and kilometers, the landscape started to change. From mostly flat, hills started to appear, then small mountains. And before we knew it, after a turn, we could see the city. From very far away, its blue Medina was visible, quite majestic indeed. We had a couple of hours there to spend freely and just discover the streets however we wanted. To be honest, there is not a lot to do in Chefchaouen per se, compared to other cities in Morocco, but it is a paradise for anyone who loves cats and likes to walk in very colorful streets. For street photographers, that was a great place. My time there was mostly spent discovering the small alleys, going a bit outside the Medina to contemplate the city from further up, beyond the walls. I also had time to visit the Kasbah, so it's a fortress with an inner garden that was beautiful. We also had the chance to see some Moroccans doing a traditional dance. It was mostly for tourists, to be honest, but that was still interesting to see and gave like a particular flavor to this trip. Before we knew it, we had to go back in the bus to drive back to Fes. On my last day, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I don't have that much time, so I wanted to buy a few souvenirs and see the things I had not yet seen in Fes. I had heard that the cemeteries were actually quite interesting to walk to. I'm not particularly a big fan of cemeteries, but I have to admit, that was quite a sight. And from there, I went to tombs that are in ruins, that are supposedly quite cool for sunset. The view on all of the city was worth the little hike you had to go through. And to be honest, that was maybe the best way I could have finished my trip. On a sunset that gave beautiful colors to Fes. I left Morocco with beautiful memories of all the places I'd seen, as well as the great people I'd met. And definitely I will be back one day to see more of it. But for now, I will leave you on very nice pictures, and I will see you in the next one. Tschüss.